Ready.
Welcome in part 2 CannaBiz Conversations. Sean Welsh, Hunter Buffington. Remember, today's episode brought to you by our wonderful friends at Potency 710, the plant-powered, purpose-driven skincare product that I, myself, actually use. So it's not just a fun sponsor. It's actually a product that I get behind because I didn't want to just sponsor something or have someone sponsor my show that I didn't actually believe in. Mandy went above and beyond, though, for everybody. She's going to be giving everyone a chance who's watching today's show to be entered to win the Luxe Travel Pack. This thing has value over $70, comes with a lifetime membership to their community, free shipping, and a ton more. I know my wife is a huge fan of the free shipping. It's like a decision maker for her, like every time she looks. It's crazy. So head over to CannaBiz Combo's IG page, get more details, and enter for your chance to win the Luxe Pack. Mandy Lyle, Potency 710. Thank you again. Hunter, you wanted to talk in the second half about sustainability. And I do too. And I want to hear about it from agricultural because as I put out in the first half, I have a tendency being in the automotive business to be a real downer when it comes to what we're trying to do with cars and EVs and what we think is futuristic and what I think is dumb. And so this is way more important to me. So Hunter, tell me about where does the sustainability, because I can tell the passion. I can tell the passion in part one. I can tell the passion in the pre-show. I can tell the passion in the people who referred you to me. So tell me, where does the passion for sustainability start for Hunter?
So for me, and when we started, I talked about growing up in Wyoming, very much an oil and gas state. And so I really came to sustainability from the idea of, what's our planet going to look like in 50 years? And I have always believed that we as human beings have the capability to solve any problem if we work together and we decide that we actually want to be solutions oriented. And my father was actually a geologist. And so my godparents, much of the people that I grew up with were in the oil and gas industry. And so I'd always been raised knowing that it was finite, right? It wasn't going to last forever. We had to make some decisions and change the way that we use fuel. I'm also a big science fiction nerd. And so the concept of how fuel affects, right, society and culture and the way that we think about interplanetary travel, right, is really based on how we fuel our world. And so I started down a sustainability track also because I was in the agriculture industry and water is constantly an issue, right? We're always thinking about how to best use our resources. And so I really started to be intrigued about what was the power of agriculture, like was in agriculture. And I have always thought too that the cure for cancer is growing in the rainforest somewhere, that we have everything we need on this planet. And so for me, it's how do we use it? How do we make sure that we don't overuse it? And how do we be appreciative of what we have, right? So we don't need excess. We really don't need all of the things that we experience every day. To sustain us, right, there's really not that much we need. We need housing, right, shelter. We need clothing because we're naked monkeys, right? So clothing is important. We need food, which includes both protein, fatty acids, and roughage, right? And then we need fuel because we as humans, right? And that's that whole idea of how we move forward in our society. And so I started to investigate what that could look like from an agricultural perspective. And very quickly, I started seeing things about hempcrete, hemp-built houses. And so that was really the first time. And it's ironic, right? Because a lot of the work that I do now is in the nutrition side of regulation. But it was hempcrete that I fell in love with first, right off the bat. Who doesn't love a house that breathes, right? That is fire resistant and pest resistant.
I thought it was fake, Hunter, the first time I read the article. I was like, there's no way that somebody did the coolest thing in the world and was able to make a house that had all these properties and had all this safety and all these things that people, it should be everywhere, right? Yeah. It should be everywhere. And I know that our farmers, first year of Farm Bill, got super behind it. Like I could see fields, you could, get a waft in the air. It was a beautiful thing. It really was. But after year one, I saw most of those fields disappear. And in my conversation with people, it came up to, where was I going to take it, Sean? We didn't have enough processors. I had a bunch of bad material, ended up molded, and I lost a ton of money here. Like, why would I continue to do this? I thought to myself, that sounds about right. You know, like we're all about getting to the end game, but we don't think about what it takes to keep it sustainable, right? From a business perspective, from a living perspective. When you say you got into
the middle, right?
When you say you got into the nutrient side of it now, like, do you mean the hemp side of nutrition, like where it's used, how it's used, and into that depth of it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the oil seed itself, so the hemp nut, has this incredible amino acid profile and a really amazing omega 369 fatty acid ratio and profile as well. If you look at it compared to a lot of the more common, more popular oil seeds, sunflower seeds, right, is a great example. Then you start to realize that there's really very few whole plant or whole nutritional seeds that you can eat and get both all the amino acids that you need and the fatty acids that you need. So there's something really special about the hemp seed. And from a supplement side, so think structure function, right? How our body works versus what nutrients we need. So nutritionally, the hemp seed provides those things. And then on the structure function side, that's where we see tinctures, oils, extracts, right? Those parts of the hemp plant that come from the flower being really beneficial. But the nutritional side, when you start to compare how much protein you get per acre with beef versus soy versus hemp, and then you say, well, how many times can we grow a hemp crop in one season? Or how does this plant perform in a row crop and alternating portfolio? And that's when it starts to really get exciting when you think about how to incorporate hemp into traditional agriculture. It has a great relationship with potatoes as well. And here in Colorado, most people don't know this, but we grow a lot of potatoes here in Colorado. And there's a fantastic symbiotic relationship with hemp as a rotational crop. The farm that I mentioned before that makes the Element horse brand, they showed me some really amazing ways. Joe Frey, their farmer, showed me that they would let volunteers come up after their first season of planting, and then they would knock them down and plant right underneath those. And it would act as a weed mat. It would keep the soil healthy by giving a home and food for the microbes, retain water, and then the vegetables and food that they were growing underneath that just thrived. And it meant less pesticides, right? Killing, all the things that people hear a lot about when we talk about the carbon market. But the name of the game with sustainability is to support the Earth's processes that have been working for, billions, hundreds of billions of years until, we came in and said, oh, we know how to do it better. And remember, I support human ingenuity. I absolutely do. But diversity, right, is also a huge part of the sustainability game. And so that's where hemp gets exciting, because we haven't even talked about the products yet, right? That's still
no. I was going to say we haven't, and I'm still hooked on rotational fields. Again, I'm in Wisconsin. I live in the middle of nowhere. I am surrounded by cornfields. I routinely will hike through them on our trails here. It's part of the deal. And right outside the house this year, it's corn. Last year it was beans, and next year it will be beans, and the year after that it will be corn. And it's been going on here, as long as I've lived here. I have family in the agricultural business here in Wisconsin who tell me, now they're probably a little biased, that we have some of the best soil in the world to grow everything and anything, and that hemp used to be the main export of Wisconsin back when it was a thing. This was the number one place to do business for hemp for that purpose. So again, a little bit shorter growing season, obviously being here in the Midwest. But I'm excited by the opportunity of the hemp seed oil, because I'm thinking two things. One, sunflower seeds are fine, but man, if I could get everything like a value from a hemp seed, I'd probably be more, my wife used flaxseed. I'm like, why don't we just use hemp seed, right? I'm feeling like that's a good mixer. But also, you say oil. And I'm wondering if that means, because it's always high heat oil that I look for the way I cook. And so I always end up with like your avocados or your sunflowers. Is this a sustainable cooking oil, Hunter, under that sort of pretense and examination? Or am I missing the boat on what you mean when you say oil?
Yeah. And that's a really great question, because when we talk about superfoods, right, those foods that have high nutritional impact, it's really easy to gloss over what the environmental impact is of those foods. Almonds a great example, right? We all love our, well, maybe not everyone, but almond milk is a staple at my house.
Yep.
And so is olive oil, right? And olive oil has special properties because you can cook it at higher temperatures. But when you start thinking about the environmental impact of how those oils and those products are produced, you really have to start questioning whether that's a product that you should commit to, right?
Or is it not sustainable, Hunter? Is that what you mean? Like it doesn't fit in to the sustainable model that you're speaking to. So when you look at these things, to be clear, the lens that you're looking at it through when you talk about good, bad, or indifferent is through the lens of sustainability, right? What does it take to get there? My wife and I always say we'll never eat foie gras because we've seen a documentary. I refuse to do anything that puts anyone through that is so whack to me. But I have friends who are like, dude, it's so good, you should try it. No, right? Like I have my own bearings of things I think are important. So when you say that, though, you're talking about how sustainable it is to continue to get and harvest and manufacture that product, right?
Yeah, it's how we form relationships with the products that we depend on. Moderation is the first step of sustainability. Everybody can practice that. When we talk about, climate action, a lot of people just feel impotent, right? Like I'm not going to be able to save the world if I just by myself. But thinking of things through a lens of moderation, how many pairs of jeans do you really need? And to be clear, I should preface this that my husband and I also lived in a tiny house for 3 years with our son, not because we wanted to be able to say we lived in a tiny house, but we wanted to find out if it really did change our footprint and if we could do it, right? Kind of put our money where our mouth is.
Yeah.
And so the idea of living in moderation it really changes the way that you think about your daily life, right?
I 100% agree.
You need to drive.
Moderation is the key to life in general, Hunter, as far as I'm concerned. Just in any facet of it. I don't care what it is. I'm an aholic of everything you can think of, right? I'm a workaholic. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a drug guy. I'm into all these things. And the only reason that my surface stays where it is because of moderation and because I've learned that everything that I want to enjoy, if I enjoy it outside of moderation, will push me to a point that the enjoyment will either turn on me and not be enjoyable or turn on those around me. And so you have to understand moderation. So I've now circled it and underlined it like 4 times in my book here, because I think it's important. Every year I go through and I clean out my closet. What have I not touched in a year? Get rid of it, donate it. And now my closet's like nothing. I used to have a gigantic walk-in, all this shit I thought I needed. It's crazy how we age and how we evolve. Because
evolution's the key, right? Because not only moderation, but that's how the planet works as well, right? If you get excess in any part of the system, the impacts affect species far down the line. Yep. And evolution happens in very small increments over incredible amounts of time, right? Again, the planet itself practices moderation. So from a sustainable perspective, that's where the next step comes, is how do we consume? Because that's where we have the power as consumers to make demands. And if you're not demanding products that are sustainable, and I know it's hard to figure out if that's true, because marketing loves the word sustain, right? Mm-hmm. But in our own consumption, being mindful about how we spend our money is the best way for us to actually practice our power. And Sean, I think it's funny that you talked about EVs, because I have a love-hate relationship with EVs. Everybody plugs them in at night. Guess what, kids? You're using fossil fuel. If you are plugging your EV in at night, you are supporting that coal plant down the road. But nobody knows, right? And that's part of this relationship.
It's a whole bigger thing for me. I think to me, the moderation is that of, and again, public transportation, going to EV and all, that's fine. We don't have bullet trains here. We don't really have a great train infrastructure at all in general. So public transportation is a miss on us. We were built on car dealers, as far as that's right. The big three in Detroit and what's going on there. But to that extent, and I don't want to go too far into it, is we need to worry about the moderation of EV versus gas. And the way to do that is called a hybrid. Okay. Last night I was watching a commercial with my wife. We're getting ready to go on a gigantic road trip, like 7 hours north of our house, to go up and sit on a cliff of Lake Superior for my birthday. And I heard, I just was doing stuff in the kitchen. We're hanging out, and I heard an ad for a Kia, which wouldn't typically be on my list. And they're like, "What do you think? A 650 miles combined?" And I stopped and I said, "What did he just say?" And she goes, "What are you stopping for? It's a Kia." I said, "No, the point is we're getting somewhere that now I am interested, because I know we have to stop in 4 hours to get gas. I know our car. I know what's going to happen. I know where we have to go. I'm good." That dude just said 600 miles, which puts me damn near the doorstep of where I'm going without stopping. And she's like, "You're an asshole. We're going to stop anyway. So stop with that. Like, please stop worrying about 600 miles. I'm getting out of the car every 150, you know?" And you're like, "Oh, okay, whatever." But the point was that I hear it. And I'm like, hybrid, 600, 700 miles, right? So yes, it's moderation, but moderation is just so important everywhere, Hunter. Like, everywhere you go to the grocery store, right? Look at the 17 million boxes of kids' food. The 17 million, it's a whole fucking aisle of kids' boxes of kids' food. I don't have kids, so I'm not great with this. But my point is that necessary? If they're under the age of 10, I didn't have much choice, Hunter, in the grocery store. Now, I know it's different now. I watch parents basically negotiate with tiny terrorists in these environments. Like, well, which one's going to make you happy in the morning? That's not my upbringing at 43. It was like, hey, Fruit Loops. I don't want, Fruit Loops next, you know? And so I just wonder, how do we get to moderation when we are built on consumerism as a culture?
So, I mean, I think that's where it really gets to, what does sustainability in the US versus what does sustainability mean in Ukraine, as an example. So I think where we are really struggling in the US is this idea that capitalism means constant and ever-growing consumption, right? And that's the antithesis to what we're talking about when it comes to sustainability. So what I would say is, instead of a constant consumption, why are we not looking to drive towards the best possible product outcome for ourselves? And again, for the planet, we still only have one, right? We're still looking to see if there's another one out there, but we really only have this one.
Yeah.
And instead of spending money on things, why not spend money on experiences, right? And I will challenge everybody that's listening today to say, do you think that you should go visit in a glacier, maybe right now? Because you might not be able to in another 20 or 30 years. Changing the perspective about what drives us, what motivates us, turning that to our friends, our family, our experiences. When my father passed, nobody on their deathbed says, "I wish I had more stuff." And he was one of the most amazing people that I've ever known in my life. And all he wanted was more time, right? Yeah. So we rush through our lives consuming, making money so that we can have more stuff. And for me, thinking 7 generations back and 7 generations forward is a fantastic way to not only feel like you're not quite impotent, because it's not just you, right? It's all these generations that are coming together, hopefully to not just fix and heal the planet, but to change relationship with each other, with the things that we do buy and how we consume. And I think hemp's amazing because it has this whole full life cycle.
That's kind of where I was going with this, right? It was like, to your point, there are just certain things that are just universally going to be good and sustainable for all of us, right? So why are we not working to do that, right? Well, we're not doing that because big business exists. And the more SKUs you have, whether it's your dispensary or your grocery store, you sell more, right? No one ever says, hey, I need like 100 less SKUs. Yeah, that's not typically the discussion, right? It's I need more, I need choices. My wife, I don't know the name of the app, But my wife has this app on her phone that she scans food and it rates it 0 out of 100. I don't know who these people are. And she's like, nope, not buying that. And it's the same, and it works the same for her skincare products. She's like, oh, that's no way. That's a 10 out of 100, And so there are people out here trying to help, trying to get us education. So Hunter, I'll ask you, where can you direct people to get education on sustainability? I don't even care if that's your own individual blog or website, Hunter. My point right now is I want to give you a little bit of a stand here to say that people need to be educated. You and I both know that, right? You and I can both talk moderation. We can both see the world a little differently, but we're probably in the real vast minority on that. Just I talk to people every day. So that's where my opinion comes from. So for you, where can folks go to learn more about sustainability and the movement they should be paying attention to?
So my company, Agriculture Policy Solutions, we really work on trying to find the intersect between regulation, policy making, right, and agriculture, incentives, and innovation, right? Bio-based plastics. It's a great place to start for folks to say, where are there bio-based products that I can replace in my own shelf? Doing things like getting the sheets that are detergent instead of buying plastic, finding a store where you can refill your bottles instead of constantly buying more plastic. I'm not going to lie, it's more expensive, but it's just as inconvenient as going to the grocery store, and feels a lot better when you don't have 4 giant, laundry detergents as you go forward. The other thing I would say is, don't be afraid to talk about it. Everybody is trying to figure out how to navigate this. Nobody knows. There isn't a perfect answer, right? And what's sustainable for you, because remember, sustainability, and I talked a lot about generations, but the reality is, if you're uncomfortable, it's not sustainable, right? If you can't access something, then it's not sustainable either. So that's a huge part of what is that sustainability aspect. And then the other thing I would say is, we all have brands that we like, that we rely on. Figure out if they have a sustainability. Do they have ESG goals? Are they participating in UN development goals? And this is where that global perspective of sustainability comes in. We are moving far away from these kind of nation states, because the reality is we are pinching our resources, right? We've been using and over consuming our resources for at least a century. And now we have a lot of pressures that are building on top of that. You include population pressures, food supply pressures. We haven't even talked about water, right?
I mean, yeah, you brought up water earlier, and I got to tell you, like, my wife and I were like, oh, where do we want to live forever? And we've been to a lot of places out west, and one of our top spots is Oregon. And I told her, babe, it's hard for me. Every time I read a house listing in Oregon, they talk about water rights. It scares the pants off me. Like, what are you talking about trucking in your water? I said I live in the country, but I have a gigantic well. Okay, so like water isn't, hypothetically, right, isn't on the forefront of the issue for me, because I know where it's coming from, and it's actually a community well, and we upkeep it and all these other things. But still, the point is that when I think about going certain places or looking at certain things, that is a big thing to me, right? And it happens all the time. But I want to bring us back to one thing as we close out that you said. I think it was the end of part 1 into part 2. We can't do any of this without talking to the farmers. Tell me more about what that means to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started this journey, because I never intended to be in policy, although I did work as an advocate trainer in climate mitigation. I've worked on a lot of climate action plans, but my goal was not to be writing bills or working at the legislative level. But it became really obvious, especially in 2014, when the Farm Bill got passed, that the farmers were the ones that had to take all the risk. They were the first ones to take the risk, right? Without contracts, they jumped in. I mean, it was helpful when Pepsi and Coke were like, we're really excited about CBD, but then the FDA cock-blocked that. That's a whole other story. But again, farmers take all the risk, right? And you cannot be timid if you're a farmer, right? You have to be brave. Every day you go out there, there's acts of God that happen. The market price is dependent on the price the year before. there's so many different areas of risk. Even crop insurance is quite challenging because of everything that's happening with climate.
I mean, and especially on the hemp side, like you put it in the ground, but you still have testing to get through. It's not just like you put it in the ground and next thing you know, there's a 10-foot hemp plant outside. Like there is so much work to be done. I remember when my wife and I were growing and our friends would be like, oh, it's the coolest thing ever. I'm like, yeah, come over for trimming. Everyone came over for the first trimming session, Hunter. No one ever came back again. Okay. So how exciting and fun is that shit, right? It's not, but it's work. It's required. I always say weed grows on trees, but it don't come out of your bag that way. It's not how it ends up to see the product. There's more effort that happens there. And the testing for these farmers, you say at the risk, right? I made mention of my buddies farmers here who they took the risk. They planted the plants without they couldn't wait. When it got approved, the season was available. If they were going to commit to the season, they were going to commit right now. So they put up their resources. Yeah. They were told they could get processing. They couldn't. They wasted an entire crop, an entire season, and they were turned off, which is, par for the course here in America. If we don't get immediate results, we're probably tending to keep shoving it down the road. But my point is that you can't blame them because the risk tolerance for these guys, some of the highest that exist in business.
And the other thing I'll say too, tying this all together and back to sustainability, is for my farmers, and I'll share that most of my farmers that are in the industrial hemp side, so that's grain and fiber, as well as those who are growing for whole plant. Some are very specifically focused on flower, but most of them are not. These are large, broad acre farms, right? Not small, very big, but they are very committed to regenerative agriculture. And I mentioned some of the benefits that my colleagues in Nevada found. But if you are going from a monoculture or a traditional agriculture practice, it's 3 years minimum to change into a regenerative practices. And it's expensive to make those shifts. You don't automatically just decide you're going to stop using any pesticides and that you're not going to use fertilizer. That's not how it works, right? We talked about how long the frame is for evolution. It's the same thing when you're making a transition from dumping fertilizer and pesticides and tilling to a no-till, no inputs, right? And it's just as risky. How many farmers can justify additional risk, right? Potentially lowering their yield while they make that transition. It's really challenging. And so this is another reason why without the farmers, we are not going to have sustainable agriculture. And without farmers, food deserts grow, people get fatter, less healthy, right? And that's the other reason why we have to have farmers. We can't just eat cardboard, which is really close to a lot of the processed food that we have today. I mean, it's pretty shocking. We need them. We need to support them. And we also need to appreciate the fact that they really do take almost all of the upfront risk. It's pretty crazy.
Man, Hunter, you have just hit the home run today. You have me excited about sustainability. I'm fairly easy to excite, but it doesn't matter. I love the idea of us getting behind it and doing more. Again, I don't have kids, but I know that there are generations to come that need to experience all the things that you and I are talking about, and travel is one of them. And when you go outside of this country, I've been fortunate to go Costa Rica a few times, and you see how other people approach agriculture, how they teach their children, right? Their schools are about agriculture. We don't do a good enough job in this country of educating our kids on what it takes to get food from their farms to their mouths. And if we did, I think they'd have far more appreciation for it. Hunter, you have been outstanding. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. We look forward to talking with you in the future. And as always, we want to thank Potency 710, and for them thanking you for watching. Mandy Lyle and her team at Potency 710 are going to give you 20% off your first order. Head over to potency710.com. Use the code podcast710. 20% off your first order. Yeah, it's worth it. You're going to love it. Hunter, thank you so much. Yeah, I know. You got maybe a little hint coming out. We look forward to hearing your take on Potency 710 and all that happened there. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And remember, our goal, as well as it should be your goal, remove the stigma, uplift this plant to its rightful place in society. Thank you all so much for joining us. next time on the CannaBiz Conversations.